A man leaves the woman whose presence in his life doesn't justify the responsibility of keeping her. And he will leave a woman that he likes. He will leave a woman that he loves. And I think this is one of the biggest differences between men and women, often, not for everybody, but often. And the reason is because a woman will often stay for love, even if it's not working, even if it's a nightmare, even if it's destroying her sometimes. If she loves him, she wants to find a way to make it work. She wants to find a way to stay. Where a man will often leave even someone he loves if he doesn't feel like the relationship is functional. Welcome to the Conscious Love Show. My name is Shane Kohler. I've spent over a decade helping women understand the unconscious patterns driving their relationships and what it actually takes to change them. I'm one of the most direct voices in the modern relationship space and the person who will tell you the truth that most coaches are afraid to name. This show is for anyone who's done settling, done shrinking, and done wondering why love keeps falling short. I'm not here to make you feel better about patterns that aren't serving you. I'm here to name them, help you understand them, and learn how to change them. If you're ready for that, I'm glad you're here, and let's get into it. All right. Hello again, everyone. Hello and welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on today. As always, pleasure to be here. Happy to be back, and I look forward to diving in with you. Before we get started today, I did just want to remind you that I am now hosting a monthly Q&A episode. And once a month, I'm going to sit down and take all the questions that you have sent in throughout the month, and I'm going to answer them in a single episode. So I did the first one last week. I'm looking forward to continuing this once a month. So I just wanted to give you a quick reminder before we get into today's episode that if you have a question, if there's something on your mind, if there's something you're going through, if there's something you'd like my insight on or want me to speak into, send in those questions. You can send those to info@thelivingrelationship.com, and we're going to be compiling all of your questions over the course of this month to prepare them for next month's episode. So if there's something you're going through right now that you would like to tell me about, shoot me an email, info@thelivingrelationship.com, and I look forward to exploring that with you on July's episode. All right, so I want to get into today's episode, and today we're talking about the number one reason men leave and the thing that makes him stay. And so what I'm going to cover today is the biggest reason that men leave. And you probably haven't heard it before, or at least not heard it put this way, because the reality is that most men don't even understand that this is the reason that they're leaving. This is not a conscious decision that he writes out on paper. It's often something that is happening in his nervous system, and he doesn't really even understand why he feels the way he feels. He just feels the need to pull out of the relationship. And if you asked him, why did you leave? He might give you an answer, but he probably wouldn't give you the deepest answer because he doesn't really understand what even happened. And so that's what I'm going to be breaking down in today's episode. And I'm going to give you the answer right up front and here in just a moment. And then we're going to spend the rest of the episode exploring exactly what that answer means and what is it that makes a man want to stay for a lifetime. So let me say it up front here. A man leaves the woman whose presence in his life doesn't justify the responsibility of keeping her. And he will leave a woman that he likes. He will leave a woman that he loves. And I think this is one of the biggest differences between men and women, often, not for everybody, but often. And the reason is because a woman will often stay for love, even if it's not working, even if it's a nightmare, even if it's destroying her sometimes. If she loves him, she wants to find a way to make it work. She wants to find a way to stay. Where a man will often leave even someone he loves if he doesn't feel like the relationship is functional. And I'm not saying that it's good, bad, right, or wrong. I think these are fundamentally different. One's not right, one's not wrong. Truthfully, they both have assets and they both have liabilities, and we should realistically find a balance between love and function. But these are foundational differences in the masculine and the feminine orientation. And something I want to say here is this is not a judgment of her worth, right? So a lot of times if somebody leaves us, we go, why wasn't I good enough for them? Why didn't they love me? But it's not about your lovability. It's not about your worth. He might have loved you. He might have liked you. He might have thought you were amazing. And still, for whatever reason, and we're going to explore some of those reasons today, he didn't feel that your presence in his life justified the responsibility of keeping you. And that can be a heavy truth to sit with. And I want to acknowledge that early on. That can be a heavy thing to let in. And I want to say that doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault. It doesn't mean you were too much. And I'm going to cover some of the nuances and different scenarios of how this could play out today. But often, for some men, no amount of responsibility is tolerable. That's just the reality for some men. Some men, these are the Peter Pan guys, never want to grow up. They're out there. They want to have fun. They want to have a good time. They want to connect. They want to have sex. They want to party. They want to kiss and touch and even date and have a good time. But when things get real, when things get heavy, they want out. Sometimes the relationship itself is just more than he's literally able to carry. And it's not necessarily a commentary on his readiness. It's not that you're too much or that you made yourself a problem. It's just that where he was in his life, he didn't have the space to carry what you needed him to carry. This is a timing issue, right? I coach people a lot of times where they meet a wonderful person at the wrong time. And that's something you've got to accept, right? It's like, if you can't carry what I need you to carry, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life waiting and hoping you'll be ready, right? Timing is a real part of this. But there's the third scenario, and that's where there's some nuance that I want to explore today, is that sometimes the way a woman shows up with a man doesn't give him enough reason to want to carry the relationship for a lifetime. And there are 3 specific things that I want to touch on today that really signal to a man that this is the relationship, the love that he wants to show up for the rest of his life. But before I get there, I want to name another thing that I think is often fundamentally different between the way men approach a relationship and the way women approach a relationship. And I think it's important to understand this. And again, this isn't right or wrong, good or bad. I think they're different orientations. And really finding a balance between the two is usually the healthy way, right? So I'm not saying that men do it right or women do it right or anybody's bad or wrong here. I'm pointing to fundamental differences in the way we think about things, the way we process things, the way we approach things. And it's important to understand this because when a woman goes into a relationship, when a woman is seeking commitment with a man, the idea of commitment to her often feels like relief. And that's because looking is costly. There's a heaviness, there's a tension. Often she's dealing with a biological clock if she wants a family, and there's a tension there. Often she's feeling pressure from external sources that men don't necessarily feel. There's a sense of being chosen and a sense of belonging that women are very conditioned into, that men are not necessarily conditioned into in the same way. So a woman, when she's seeking, she's carrying a lot of tension. And when she finally finds what she's been looking for, there's a release of tension in a lot of ways. It feels like relief to her nervous system. She feels like I can finally relax. I can finally surrender. The search is over. I'm safe. I'm held. I'm home. And now I can be at ease. And there's nothing wrong with that orientation. It's really valid. But I think a lot of women misunderstand and think that men feel the same way about it. And this is often one of the biggest unspoken tensions in a relationship between a woman and a man, is she's moving towards the commitment and she's going, this is going to be the best thing in the world. Why are you having a hard time with it? Like, Let's find relief in each other. Let's find relief together. Let's co-regulate. Let's relax each other. Let's make each other feel safe. Let's give each other a home. And to her, that feels like the most natural thing in the world. And so she might struggle to understand, why doesn't he want that too? Because it often doesn't feel that way to men. When a man enters a commitment, what he feels is the weight of carrying that commitment. He's not looking at this like the relationship is going to be a breath of fresh air and a sigh of relief. He's looking at it like, this is something heavy that I'm going to have to carry. It's going to require a constant level of vigilance from me. It's going to require a constant level of presence. It's going to require me to constantly be attentive to someone's needs. It's going to demand time. I'm going to have to take time away from my business or from the things that I'm doing, and I'm going to have to attend to something. And that, it's not that he doesn't want it, because most men actually do want a commitment. Most men actually do want a partner, a family. Men really do want that. It's that when he comes close to having it, what his nervous system registers is not a big exhale like he can finally rest. What his nervous system registers is it's time to pick up something heavy. And those are fundamentally different orientations. Now, what's funny about this is it tends to reverse over time. So often, you look 10 years into a relationship, the woman often feels like she's carrying a heavy responsibility, and the man often feels like he can relax. That's the paradox, which that's a conversation for another time. But it's interesting how going into it, we have two different experiences, and then over time, those experiences kind of flip. But anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent there. What I want to name is this awareness that when we approach it from two different angles, we have two fundamentally different experiences. And this is why so many women feel like they're reaching for commitment and feel like men are always moving out of reach. And often the reaching creates the feeling of heaviness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But I want to name, what is it that resolves this for a man? Right? Like, what are the things? Because he's going to feel like he's picking up responsibility no matter how you look at it. He's going to feel that no matter how you look at it. So it's not about, and this is where I think a lot of women try to overcorrect. They try to make it seem like it's not a responsibility. And they try to act like they're really easygoing. They try to be the cool girl. No, we can hang out, no pressure, nothing serious. We can have fun. We can have sex. We can do all the stuff. And she hopes that he's just going to like being with her enough that he's going to want to keep her around. But that's the thing. He can like you and still not want to keep you around. He can love you and still not want to keep you around. And in fact, part of what that playing the cool girl thing does is, like, men aren't stupid. I know we might seem like it sometimes, but we're really not dumb. And we're more intuitive than we give ourselves credit for, because we don't talk about our intuition a lot. We don't really think about it a lot. It's not even like a distinction for us. Like, we don't sit around and go like, oh, that's my intuition. But that doesn't mean we don't feel things. It doesn't mean we don't sense things. Men just don't often have the same language for the stuff that women do. And so his intuition is hitting him, even if he doesn't call it that, even if he doesn't recognize it as that. And what his intuition is telling them is that no relationship is easy. No woman doesn't have needs or deep desires for a relationship. No person doesn't have that, right? So he's aware of that. And so when you're not communicating needs, when you're not revealing that or calling him into that, it often creates the reverse effect, because what his intuition is reading, what his nervous system is telling him is, what are you not telling me? Right? At what time is everything going to suddenly shift and you have a bunch of needs that I never heard about? And so he knows the relationship is requiring him to be responsible. He knows that there's going to be a level of heaviness in what he's carrying. And the thing to do is not to try to hide that or pretend like that's not the case. In fact, a woman who knows her value, she shows up and says, yes, carrying me does require you to be responsible. I don't accept men who can't be responsible in my life. And if you want me in your life, show me that you're the responsible man who can hold me. Like, a woman who knows her value shows up like that already. But the thing to aim for here is to also signal at the same time that your presence in his life is worth more than the responsibility he carries. That if he chooses that responsibility for himself, he will be paid back in dividends. That you're going to be the best thing that ever happened to him. And this is often how the reversal happens that I was talking about later, because a man 10 years into a relationship often ends up feeling relief because that amazing woman that he chose to carry that responsibility has been paying back in dividends over all these years. So she's taught his nervous system that being with her is so much better than not being with her. And it's worth every amount of responsibility that he's carrying. So what are the 3 things that signal to a man that she is worth the responsibility? The first one, I'm just going to name them and then we can explore each one in detail. He has to feel like she makes him a better man. And this one's important because I think inherent in here is that he has to want to be a better man. And to the ladies, when you're dating a man, I would invite you to ask yourself this question, like check in. Do I see that he wants to be a better man? That's maybe one of the most qualifying questions of any man you would date. Is it clear to you that he wants to be a better man? Because complacent men don't take on responsibility. Responsibility inherently makes us better. Like, I'm a better man now than I was as a single man. I'm a better man now as a father than I was before being a father. I'm a better man now running my business than I was before. I'm a better man now having all of my clients than I was before I was doing this work, right? Like, responsibility makes us better. Complacent men avoid responsibility. So if you can identify in a man, does he want to be a better man? That's a huge qualifying question for you. That gives you a lot of clarity about how much you can trust him, about how much you should really invest in him. And then if he's the kind of man who wants to be a better man, then you want to signal to him that the relationship with you is something that will make him better. And we'll talk more about how to do that. Number 2, his goals have to feel more achievable with you than without you. So when he experiences the relationship with you, does he suddenly feel like everything he wants in his life is getting closer to him or further away? Now, again, and maybe this is another qualifying question for you, does he have goals? What is he moving towards something in his life? That's an important one, because if he has no goals, this doesn't work. But here's the thing. If he has no vision, then he can't see you inside of it. And if you remember something I said earlier, I said men leave relationships that aren't functional. Well, he has to have a function to know if a relationship is functional. Right? So if he has no vision, he can't see you inside it, which means he's pretty much just around for a good time. That's really important for you to know, ladies. If a man is going to choose you for a lifetime, he has to have a vision that he sees you fitting inside of. He sees you being part of that vision. And if he has no vision, that can't happen, and he can't truly commit to you. Because the reality is he's not really committed to himself at that point. so he has no space to commit to something greater than himself. So his goals have to seem more achievable with you than without you. And we'll talk about what that looks like. The third thing, he has to trust you. And this is something I'll go more into, but I guess what I want to say here is that he can only trust you when he's really seeing you. Right? Like when he really sees you authentically, that signals to him that you are trustworthy. And if there's something that he doesn't feel like he's seeing, that inherently fractures his trust. And remember what I was saying about intuition, men are very intuitive, even if they don't call it that. And so if there's something you're not showing him, that's going to signal a lack of trust. I'll circle back to this. I don't want to get too far into it, but there's a lot to touch on there, so I'm going to come back to it. So I want to go into each of these three things that you make him feel, he feels like the relationship makes him better as a man. He feels like the relationship makes him a better man. His goals seem more achievable with you than without you, and he trusts you. Those are the three things that to a man make a relationship seem functional. And, I said earlier that a man will leave a woman even if he loves her, if the relationship isn't functional. And here's maybe the shadow side of that, is often a man will stay with a woman that he doesn't love if the relationship is functional enough. Now, I said this earlier, and I just want to name this here. A healthy, integrated human, whether you're a man or a woman, will have a healthy balance of both of these. Right? So women, while a woman would often stay for love, she needs to also have a standard of functionality. It has to work more than just love. If you love someone, but he's a toxic nightmare and he's destroying your life, like, the relationship has to have some level of functionality. And men should have some standard for love. Like, men will often stay in functional relationships, but really a man should develop himself to the point where he should need to love the person as well. He should crave that emotional intimacy. And so whether you're a man or a woman, a healthy balance or a healthy regulated person has a balance of these two things. But the foundational masculine orientation is around functionality. The foundational feminine orientation is around love. I hope that makes sense. So these are the three things that make a relationship feel functional to a man. And so first one, he has to feel like the relationship makes him a better man. So the question is, what kind of relationship makes a man feel like a better man? Well, his woman is his mirror. Like he's tuning into her on a really subtle level. And there's something innate in the masculine frame where he kind of needs his woman to be okay. Like, ask any man, any man who's in a relationship, like, ask him, like, can you really be okay if your wife's not okay or if your partner's not okay? And, he might be functional. He might be getting on with his day. He might be handling it, but there's like, it's something in the nature of the masculine, like, provider is like, he needs her to be okay. He needs her to be happy. And when she's not, it weighs on her. And so it weighs on him. And so there's this kind of tension that he's always carrying of like, is she being provided for the way she needs to be? The way that makes her healthy and happy and satisfied and safe. Safety's probably the biggest one. right? Is he showing up in a way that makes her feel safe? Now, that process can be something that calls him forward into his highest attributes. That process can also be something that drains and exhausts him. So you have the version where nothing he does is ever enough. He constantly feels criticized. He constantly feels put down. He constantly feels judged. He feels like he can't win. That is a dynamic where that very tension of him wanting to provide her happiness is constantly draining him, is constantly chipping away at him, is constantly making him feel like he's less of himself. That's not functional. Now, some men do stay in those environments, but those are usually men with very low self-esteem. A woman who's constantly criticizing him, a woman who's constantly putting him down. She's constantly questioning his decisions. She's constantly making him feel small, emasculating him, right? Like that kind of environment. And he's trying to make her happy. He's trying to provide for her. He's trying to be her man. But everything he does is undermined or like turned back around and used against him. The only man who stays in that kind of environment is a man who has very low self-esteem and is partnering with someone who's going to remind him how he feels about himself. I often talk about that dynamic with women, where women choose the men who mirror how they feel about themselves. Well, the same is true for men. A man who stays where he is belittled, criticized, emasculated, where nothing is ever good enough, is a man who needs to be in a dynamic where he's with a woman who reminds him how he feels about himself. Now that same tension, so this tension of, him wanting to make her safe, him wanting to make her happy, him wanting her to be satisfied, him wanting her to be fulfilled. This is part of the responsibility that I was talking about that he feels when he partners with a woman, is he feels this responsibility to provide for her. Now, of course, this can be unhealthy, right? Like nobody should be the single provider of another person's happiness. There are unhealthy levels of this, but there's also something beautiful about it where he wants to be the hero who takes care of his woman. He wants to be the one that she can relax into, that she can feel safe with, that she can feel loved by. Like he wants to be that space for her. And that's a beautiful thing. And that same tension can call him into his highest self. So when his efforts are validated, when they're rewarded, when he gets acknowledged, when her needs require him to increase his capacity for empathy, increase his capacity to listen, increase his capacity to be present, increase his ability to communicate, increase his ability to deal with his own feelings, right? These are all character improving qualities. These are things that are like the very act of being present to his partner is catalyzing a transformation in him. And she's not unreasonable. She's not setting impossible standards. She's not setting up scenarios where he fails and then criticizing him for it. She's letting him win. She's letting him feel like he succeeds. She's letting him feel like he's her hero. And the very process of him providing for her is catalyzing a transformation and a growth inside of him. This is one of the most beautiful things that happens between a man and a woman. It's amazing when you see this happen. And like, if you look at people in your life, like if there's any way, maybe you've known a man for 10 years and you knew him before he was married and after he's married. and you've seen how he's changed in that time. Right? There's a way that women transform men, usually for the better. And that's what he's seeking in partnership. When a man feels that, he will feel that this relationship is worth carrying any amount of responsibility for. And again, I want to remind something I said earlier, where it's not about making him feel like you're not a responsibility. It's about signaling to him that you're worth the responsibility. Right? So a high-value woman shows up, yeah, I'm high maintenance. Right. And you don't have to be high maintenance. Some people are genuinely low maintenance. Right. But I just mean, like, I'm not a free ride. Like, they're carrying this relationship truly requires something real of you. And I'm worth every bit of it, because I will make you the man you want to be. Or that's probably not the way to say it, but I will create the environment where every day you have the opportunity to become more of the man you want to be. You're not making him that man, but you're creating an environment that gives him countless opportunities to become that man. I think there's part of this too. And, I talked about validating him. I talked about making him feel like a hero. I talked about making him feel like he can win. And those are important. A man needs to feel that with his woman. That nurtures his soul. At the same time, he needs to be challenged by her. And this is the other side of that same coin. If it's all validation and no challenge, it's fake. One of the biggest things that makes him a better man is knowing that he's going to get called out on his shit. Is knowing that if he does something that, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say is wrong. I don't love saying it that way, right? What's a better way to say that? Like something that's out of integrity, or something that is out of alignment with the life and the vision they're building, or out of alignment is probably a good way to put it, right? If he's acting out of alignment with who she knows he is, or what she knows he's capable of, or what she knows their life together is, she's going to call him on it. She's going to name it. He knows that he's going to have to be accountable. And that is, I was thinking about this recently. I was like, my wife has really shown me where the line is with a lot of things. Our partnership has. It's not like she had to set the line for me, but it's like, what I mean by this is that, like, if I was just a single man, I would just be drifting. Because and it doesn't mean I wouldn't be working hard. It doesn't mean I wouldn't be doing things in my life, but I wouldn't have the center of gravity that puts my whole life into context. And my wife rarely has to have a conversation with me about anything. It's not like she's holding me accountable every day of the week. Like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. You're slipping on your integrity. Like, my wife, that almost never happens. But I have a living reflection that it literally sets the standard for me every day of my life. She doesn't have to call me out on things, because the very fact that she is here in my life is in of itself already calling me out on everything. And if she ever needed to, she would. And I know that too. I know that if I ever cross the line, I'm going to have to be accountable for it. That makes me a better man. Number 2, his goals feel more achievable with her than without her. I said earlier that a man needs to have a vision, and he needs to be able to see you inside of that vision. The biggest example I can give for this is the last long-term relationship I had before my wife, and then I met my wife. And because they were both really good relationships. Like, my relationship with this woman was wonderful. I liked her, I loved her, and I left her. And it was even really confusing for me at the time, because I didn't really understand why I was leaving her, and I did everything I could to try to stay. But this is what I was talking about with the intuition. At the time, I didn't realize it was my intuition, but like my body was literally telling me I had to leave her. Like it got to the point where I would be around her and my skin would crawl. Like I would feel a physical need to get out of that house. And it was really complicated for me because I wanted to be with her. I loved her. We'd been together for over a year. She had a daughter. We had like, the three of us were like our own little family. Like I loved her. I loved her daughter. I loved so much about our life together. And I started to get this feeling that I had to get out. And I questioned myself too. I remember talking to some of my mentors at the time, like, what's wrong with me? This was everything I thought I wanted. Why am I afraid of commitment? Like I tried to look at it from every angle, but at the end of the day, I was like, I have to get out of here. And I couldn't understand why at the time. The reality was I was picking up on things that I couldn't make sense of at the time because I didn't have enough awareness, but it's like I was wiser than I was consciously aware of. So my body knew, my intuition knew that we were not in alignment for where I wanted to go in my life. But I couldn't reconcile that with the fact that I liked her, I loved her, and I loved everything we had. But eventually, when it got to the point where every time I was around her, my skin would crawl and I would feel a visceral need in my body to get out of there, I had to accept I can't be with her, even though I wanted to be with her. And so when I look at where I was in my life and why that was happening, there's something really clear that stands out that I didn't even recognize this until years later. But I had committed myself to a certain path at the time. I've shared about this before on the podcast, but I was in this extensive 3-year-long internship. I was working with this large seminar training company. I was traveling all over the country delivering these trainings. I was in a 3-year-long intensive internship that I was paying thousands of dollars a month to be a part of. So it was a paid internship, but I was paying, right? Like I was paying thousands of dollars a month to travel around the country and sit in these training rooms and be trained by world-class trainers to deliver these seminars. I was investing every dime I had, every moment of free time I had. Like this was my whole life at the time. This and her. That was my whole life. And she was watching me do this. And I think she thought I was a little crazy. She didn't think it was going to work out. And I did succeed at it. Like I ended up doing this for quite a few years until COVID happened and everything changed. But I ended up doing this for quite a few years and I did succeed at it, but she didn't believe I would. She was cynical about the company that I was being trained by. She thought they were scamming me. She thought they were leading me down a garden path, that they were going to take all my money and have me sit in all these trainings and nothing would ever come of it. I don't know if she questioned my own skills or my own capability. She might have, I don't know, but she definitely didn't believe that this was going to work out for me. And she would make cynical comments about it. She would make these little undercutting things that would like tear down my dream or tear down my hope. It was like I could feel that she wasn't on my team with it, even though I never even consciously recognized it. Like I never sat down and thought about this. I never said, she really doesn't support this. It never even occurred to me. I would hear those comments and they would hurt, but I would just kind of brush over it. But my nervous system was registering all of this. It was registering that my entire life is moving in a direction and she is pulling me away from that direction. She is antagonistic to the thing I want most in my life. And that became a fundamental conflict between us. There were a couple other things too. And like, let me preface this by saying that I'm not a jealous person. And I'll also contrast this with my wife because this woman, and I don't want to make her sound like a bad person. She was a lovely person, wonderful mother. I genuinely loved her. There were so many things about her that I thought she was amazing, but she wasn't my wife. And we got into a big fight once because some guy that she had kind of a casual friendship with, he wasn't like a close friend. They kind of casually knew each other through some mutual acquaintances or something. And he invited her to go out on his boat. And she told me one night we were out to dinner and she's like, this guy invited me to go out on his boat with him and I want to go. And I'm like, okay, so it's just you and this guy? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, and you're going to be out on his boat alone? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what are you going to be doing? And she's like, well, we're going to go snorkeling. And I'm like, so this guy is taking you snorkeling out on his boat, just the two of you alone. That sounds like a date to me. I'm like, are you going on a date with this guy? She's like, no, it's not a date. And I'm like, okay, well, and then she started to go like, what are you insecure about? What do you think is going to happen? It's just a friend. And I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like a friend. Like, I've never heard of this guy before. Like, he sounds like he's asking you on a date and it sounds like you said yes. And she's like, what, do you think I'm going to cheat on you? I was like, no, I don't think you're going to cheat on me. And this is what I was trying to communicate is like, I don't think you're going to cheat on me. But I feel like a man asking you on a date and you saying yes is disrespectful to me and disrespectful to our relationship. And she couldn't understand that. She couldn't see any way that she wouldn't go that wouldn't be me controlling her and telling her what she can and can't do. And I'm not judging her. I'm not saying she's even wrong for that. I'm saying that was a misalignment in the way I saw our relationship and the way she saw our relationship. Because I wanted my wife or my partner to say, you know, I'm in a relationship with someone. I really don't think it's appropriate for me to go out on your boat with you, just the two of us all day. You know, maybe if you want to have a group of people go out on your boat, me and my boyfriend could both come. Right? Like, that would be an appropriate response. And I remember something my wife did actually very early on when we started dating, which I said specifically to my wife, thank you. It really means a lot to me. So there was a guy that my wife had met at a like event she was doing. And she was talking to him about this program and he wanted to learn more about the program. And he invited her. He's like, why don't you come over to my house? I'll make dinner. We can sit out on my deck and have a bottle of wine and we can talk about the program. And this is before she was my wife. We had maybe been dating a couple of months. And she said to him, you know what? There's a restaurant near my house. They have a deck. Why don't we go and sit out on that deck and we can have a bottle of wine there and talk about the program? And she said, you know, I started dating someone recently and you know, we're exploring that. And I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to go to your house, just the two of us, and sit out on your deck. I didn't have to coach my wife on that. I didn't have to talk her into it. We were just aligned on that. She showed our relationship the same respect that I was hoping she would. And so that's the kind of alignment that made me feel like my goals were achievable with her. You know, if I look at what I was doing, and I ended up meeting my wife actually through that program that I was doing and the internship I was doing. And it's really interesting that, like, completely opposite from the other woman I was dating who would be like antagonistic about it, my wife was so supportive. She would like go out and buy me like shirts and ties, and we were long distance, so she'd be in New Jersey and I'd be in Florida, and she would come down to Florida with like 10 shirts and 10 ties that she bought me, and she'd be like, these can go with your suits, and she'd like match them up and help me like coordinate my suits and stuff. And I remember, like, I had part of my internship was I had to host these like small events. They were like mini trainings, and I had to host them and I had to record them. And when my wife was in town, she would go and she would sit there while I was delivering these. And I remember one night, and sometimes she would attend on Zoom. So I'd set up the computer and she would attend on Zoom when she couldn't be there live. And one night, nobody showed up. I went to deliver this mini seminar. Nobody showed up. And the only person in the audience was my wife on Zoom. And I'm on stage and I'm delivering this little seminar. and she's like cheering me on Zoom. So it was just like the way that she positioned herself as the person who was cheering me on every step of the way, the person who, she made it clear that she was aligned with the goals I had, the life that I wanted to have. She made the life I want feel closer rather than further away. And one little nuance, and this actually goes right into the next point about trust that I want to get to in a second. But one little nuance here is because I see it happen a lot, that a woman will do these kinds of things that I was just describing with the shirts and the ties and the seminars and things like that. And, I see women doing these things for men sometimes. And there's a subtle quality to it that I want to name for whoever might relate to this. Sometimes she will do it, not because she genuinely cares about him succeeding, but because she hopes that if she does enough of this kind of stuff, she will prove her worth to him and she'll get chosen. And that fundamentally underlines the trust that I'm going to touch on in the next point. And one thing, again, going back to the intuition, like one thing I could feel about my wife was, even if our relationship didn't work out, she wanted me to be successful at this. Even if we didn't work out, she was still going to be cheering me on and hoping that I got what I was working towards and that she did everything she could to support that. I could feel that. And that gave it a different quality. And so that ties right into trust, because this is the part that I think undermines the otherwise perfect partner. Is you could do everything I just named, but if you're doing it as a strategy to extract what you want from the relationship rather than genuinely doing it because it's who you are, there's a subtle inconsistency. And what that does is that undermines trust. And this is where, like, you could do everything right, but if it's not coming from the right place, it's going to undermine it. Because it creates a sense like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I said this earlier, but I want to come back to it. If there's something he's not seeing, if some part of the relationship is being curated, if there's some part of you you're withholding because you don't think it's worthy, or you don't think it's lovable, or you don't want him to see it, or you're trying to pretend that's not you, that creates a sense of mistrust. And he might not be able to name it. He might not be able to he can't even necessarily point to it and say that's the thing. But there's something he will feel that is subtly eroding an otherwise perfect foundation. I remember I did an interview series a while back. It was called Why Men Fall in Love. And I interviewed 20 men. Some of them were my mentors. Some of them were some of them were friends, colleagues, but good, honorable men that I trust, that I admire across various areas of my life. And I interviewed 20 of them. And the question is what made you fall in love with your partner? They were all married or in committed relationships. And I asked each of them, what made you fall in love with your partner? Like, of all the women you dated, of all the women in your life, like what set her apart? And one of the men I interviewed, he said this, and I thought it was because we were talking about how, like, he was saying how she would call him out on his shit, and how, like, he knew that whether he liked it or didn't like it, whether it made him feel good or it made him feel bad, he was getting what was real. And he was talking about how much he trusted her because he knew that whatever he got from her, it was always real. And he shared this with me. I never forgot this. He said that, when I was dating her, I was looking for the woman who would be the mother of my child. And one of the biggest questions I was asking myself was, if we have children and something happens to me, if I die, like, would I trust this woman to raise my children? And I think the undercurrent of that question is exactly what I'm touching on here, is like, there was something he had to feel like, I trust this woman not only with my life, but with my children's life. Like, I trust her on every level that could possibly be. That's like the deepest level of trust. Like, I'm only newly a father. My daughter's 11 months old, and I get it now. I don't think I got it really before being a father, but I get it. Like, trusting someone with my daughter's life is the ultimate level of trust. I need my partner to be so solid. And I would actually say, like, going back to where women need functional standards the way men have them, I would say that same question is like essential for women. Like, would you trust this man with your child's life? Would you trust him on that level if you had to leave your child completely dependent on him? Would you have certainty that your child would be okay? If you don't trust the person on that level, I don't think you should be marrying them or like partnering with them in any real way. And I know that's a high standard, but that's essential. And I think this one is so important because you can do everything right. But if there's something in the relationship that doesn't feel clean, it'll subtly erode the trust that undermines everything else. There's a visualization I wanted to share today, and I was thinking about it as I was preparing for today's episode. And I want you to imagine two different states of being. And if anybody knows what a torus is, a torus is, if you imagine, it's like a donut shape almost. So it's like a round shape that has a hole in the middle, and it's like a cycling of energy. So if you imagine the human body, for example, and imagine the human body standing there, and then there's a field of energy that goes up, out through the head, and then circles back around and comes down through the feet, or comes up through the feet and back through the body and then out through the head. And it's like this continuous vortex of energy that is constantly like self-perpetuating, self-feeding, self-sourced. And it's interesting. This is scientific fact. What I'm about to say is the human heart actually produces a toroidal field. It's that same torus shape coming out of the head, circling around, up through the feet. And so the human heart produces a toroidal field that actually extends several meters outside of the body. And it's supposed that, if you get into more like quantum ideas, it's supposed that when a human being is really at high power, high energy, that field extends much further. Like, it encapsulates more. And if you're operating at low energy or low power, that field kind of contracts and like withdraws inside of you. So imagine like this toroidal field, the donut shape that is moving out through your head and then circling around and coming up through your feet. And this is like it's your energetic field. And the torus is such a powerful shape. Like, it's also the shape that like galaxies have. It's the shape that plants have. Like, we can observe this shape time and time again through nature. It seems to be the shape that high power energy takes in nature. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the human heart has a toroidal field. But if you think about this visualization, right? So imagine two states of being. And one is this person, maybe a woman or a man, but they're standing inside of a massive toroidal field. And it's just circulating at incredible speed and incredible energy. And it's like this self-feeding vortex that just gets bigger and bigger and more expansive. And it's this high level energy that's moving at really fast pace. And that energy is self-giving. It's life-affirming. That energy is not looking for anything outside of itself. It's self-generating, right? Like that's the thing about the Taurus is the energy is generative in and of itself. It's not pulling something from the outside in. It's a self-sourced vortex. And then I want you to imagine another person in a different state of being. And imagine that person has almost like a void in their heart. So rather than this toroidal field getting bigger and bigger and expanding outward and outward and outward and outward, it's contracting inward. And you can almost imagine it being like sucked into a void in their heart. Rather than expanding outward, it's collapsing inward. And then what this person is doing is they're reaching out. They have their hands outstretched and they're reaching out, trying to get a hold of something outside of themselves to pull it inward and fill that void. But everything they pull inward just gets sucked into that void. And I want you to just for a moment imagine these two states of being. This swirling vortex of incredible energy, just self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating, self-sustaining, and it's just moving faster and faster and expanding more and more and more and more and more. And that field is magnetic. That field is attractive because of the energy that field is generating. It is organically pulling things into it. And in context of today's conversation, I think for a woman, a man is one of the things that gets kind of pulled into that field. And when he carries the relationship, it doesn't feel so heavy because that vortex is actually lifting him up. That vortex is elevating him. And then if you imagine the other one with this kind of emptiness or this vacuum in their heart, and the energy field is collapsing inward and it's kind of getting sucked into this vortex. And then she's reaching out and her hands are outstretched, trying to get a hold of something to pull inward. But everything that gets sucked in is just evaporating into this vacuum. And those outstretched hands, even though they're trying to get a hold of something, they're actually keeping everything at an arm's length. They're actually keeping the love, the commitment, the partnership at a distance. Those hands are pushed out like a barrier that doesn't let anything in. And as I was considering like everything we've touched on today, that's the imagery that came to mind. And I want you to imagine like, what would it feel like to stand in the center of that vortex? What would it feel like in your body to experience that self-sustaining energy that's just expanding outward and outward and outward? And what does it feel like when all your energy is collapsing into a void in your heart? And you're just reaching out, trying to get a hold of something, but the very act of reaching out is actually pushing things away. So I gave you the intellectual framework. Making him feel like the relationship makes him a better person, making him feel like his goals and his dreams are more achievable with you than without you. Creating that unshakable foundation of trust. That's the intellectual framework. Now, this is the energetic framework. What does it actually feel like in your body to stand inside of a massive vortex of your own energy? To be self-sourced, self-sustaining. To have a field around you that actually elevates and lifts up everything that enters that field. I wanted to leave you with that imagery as we close out today's episode. And one thing I want to name, I've been sharing on recent episodes about my relational blueprint system. And this is a system I've been developing. It's a certain framework that will help you identify your relational blueprint. These relational blueprints are certain patterns that I've seen repeated over and over and over again in the various thousands of clients I've worked with. And I've distilled it down to 4 core patterns. The thing that makes that energy collapse into that void like that is your relational blueprint. Your relational blueprint is a certain patterning you've established that creates that collapsing experience and keeps you reaching outward while at the same time pushing things away. And so if what I've shared today resonates with you, and if you feel any degree of that, and there's no shame in this because we all have a blueprint, right? We were all conditioned into love in various ways, and those weren't necessarily the healthiest ways. And so if you feel, you know what I mean when I talk about that collapsing, that kind of everything getting sucked into that void in your heart, I want you to know that there's a certain blueprint, there's a certain patterning that creates that experience. And if you'd like to give a name to that so you can see it clearly, I want to invite you to take my blueprint quiz. You can go to inspiredloveapproach.com/blueprint. You can take the quiz. The quiz is going to give you an opportunity to just get a name for your blueprint and understand really what that blueprint is. And then if you want to take it a step further, I'll send you a short video where I just go through this blueprint and explain it in detail. And then if you want to take even one step further than that, I'm actually offering a discounted option where you can book an audit with a member of my team who will review your blueprint with you, and they'll help you map out a personal healing journey based on your specific blueprint. So anyway, thank you for being with me today. This has been an interesting episode to explore with you, and I'm grateful that you were here. I'm grateful that you tuned in for it. I'll see you back here next week. Remember, send your questions in for the Q&A session. So every month we're doing a Q&A session. I want your questions. I want to answer them. So please, if there's something you're going through right now, send it in. We want them. And I look forward to reading your questions, covering them in our upcoming episode. And I'll see you back here next week. Take care, everybody. Lots of love. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.